Everybody knows you've got to become good at taking and asking for criticism if you want to become good at anything, and this especially applies to game development. So as a game developer, what's the best way to ask for criticism? How do you deal with all of the feedback you get for your game? And how can you provide useful feedback to other game developers so they can improve their games? If we manage to answer and master these questions, the entire game dev community will benefit from that, and obviously your own games will become a lot better as well. I don't claim to have all of the answers, but I'd love to start a discussion because this is clearly worth our time. Now let's assume you made a game. Where can you even get feedback from? That's where it all starts, right? Obviously, leverage your real-life contacts, ask your friends, ask your family to play the game and give you feedback. Don't be afraid to ask classmates or colleagues. Asking strangers can be great as well, especially if you make a mobile game, because it's so easy to just start it on your device and hand it to a random person on the street. And if you're too shy for stuff like that, lucky you, there's still the internet. Here you can ask multiple people for feedback at once. In the best case scenario, you build a little audience, and then whenever you need feedback, you just push out your game. But even if you don't have an audience yet, there are places you can go. There are Facebook groups. Reddit is also awesome for that. You could also join a couple of game dev Discord groups. The link to ours is in the description, by the way. But when you're just getting started, I think what's even more effective than asking a group of people to play your game is asking individuals, because you can do that on the internet as well. Who would have thought? There are two things you can do. Either you reach out to game developers, and I definitely do that on Twitter. There are a lot of game developers on Twitter, and I feel like if you contact them directly, there's a pretty decent chance they will play your game. The other thing you can do is searching for people that are part of your target audience. You can find these people in online communities on Reddit, on Twitter, on Facebook. One tip I have for you is to search for games that are similar to yours, because everybody writing about these games might very well be in your target audience as well. Just write them something like, "Hi there, seems like you're a big fan of Bloons Tower Defense. I'm making a very similar game, so it'd be really cool if you could check it out and let me know what you think. Would appreciate your feedback." When asking for feedback, there are a couple of best practices. One of them, obviously, ask politely, because you don't want to come off as rude. Secondly, try to personalize the message as much as possible, otherwise it just looks like spam. So just give your message a bit of context and address the people or the person you're talking to. Also respect people's time. If they don't answer or if they decline, don't ask them again. Show them right away that you value their opinion. That once again can improve your chances quite a bit. Same goes for the next tip. Give them a reason why they should play your game. Yes, a lot of people on the internet are nice enough to check out your game regardless, but if you can give them a reason, if you manage to pique their interest, for example, that swings the odds even more in your favor. Also see if there's a way you can help them first. Maybe you can give them feedback on something, or maybe you can just like a couple of their posts, but then still accept the fact that a lot of the people you will ask for feedback will either not respond, or maybe even give you very negative feedback for your game. That's just something you have to accept, something you have to be mentally prepared for. So there's no reason to be afraid of that. Just keep in mind that every single failure brings you a step closer towards your goal. Definitely ask as many people as possible, because the bigger the test sample, the better. If you just take the opinion of 2 or 3 of your friends, that is kinda dangerous, because in 2 months from now, somebody else will play the game and tell you exactly the opposite. So better get a lot of varied opinions now before it's too late. When you ask for feedback, there are a couple of things you can do to make sure you actually get some interesting information. First of all, ask a couple of specific questions. How did you like the gameplay? How did you like the main character? Did the controls feel okay? Usually that encourages your feedback givers to give you a more in-depth response. When you talk to somebody who's giving you feedback, don't be overly defensive. I know it's very tempting to defend yourself, but there's no need for that. If you're getting feedback and you are talking more than the other person, you're doing it wrong. Your job is to ask questions and not to explain why you did what you did. In some scenarios, it can be very beneficial to explain your design goals. So which audience do you want to cater to and which feelings do you want to evoke? Knowing that will help others to give you more accurate feedback, especially when we're talking about other game developers. You might want to consider showing different versions of your game. If you tried out a couple of different looks, for example, or if you tried out a couple of different mechanics, why not give all of these versions to your testers so they can tell you what they like best? One thing I found immensely useful is a feedback form. You can use Google Forms for that, for example, and that allows you to ask a couple of very specific questions and to collect all of your data in one place. One thing I absolutely shouldn't forget to mention here is that it's also very important that you just watch a couple of people play your game. There's no replacement for some good old playtesting, because sometimes people just can't verbally express what's wrong with your game. Sometimes you need to see it with your own eyes. But I guess that's a massive topic as well, so let's save that for another video. For now, let's focus on the question, what do you do with all of the feedback you receive? Well, first of all, write it down. Don't assume that you can just remember all of it. And secondly, say thank you. That's the least you can do. You probably want to collect all of your feedback in one place so you can sort it and look through it more easily. And once you got that, you can start discarding all of the feedback that doesn't align with your design goals. That's why it's important to let people know what your design goals are. This way you get less crappy feedback that you have to discard later on. For every critique or suggestion you receive, think very closely what the real underlying issue of that is, because oftentimes the best solution is completely different from what your playtesters suggest. For example, they might tell you something like, level 2 is way too hard, please make it easier. But the core underlying issue might very well be that they didn't understand the combat system in level 1 properly. So the solution wouldn't be, as suggested, making level 2 easier, but maybe making level 1 harder and building a better tutorial. So listen to the feedback, but see if there's a better solution for the same problem. Definitely try to see if you can spot certain tendencies in the feedback you've received, because it's a little dangerous to listen just to the opinion of one person. If it's something you agree with, sure, go for it. Otherwise, take single opinions with a grain of salt. You simply can't implement all of the feedback you get. That would cause way too much feature creep. So definitely be a little picky with what you want to implement and what you discard, but don't overshoot into the other direction either. There are definitely some people out there that ask for a lot of feedback because they like the attention and it gives them a good feeling, whatever, and then they implement none of it. Needless to say, that's a waste of time as well. What you need to do is find the middle ground in between. Don't listen to all of the feedback, but definitely listen to general tendencies. Once you're done deciding which feedback you want to implement and which feedback you want to discard, I think it's a very good idea to sort them into high priority, medium priority and low priority tasks. Then start with the high priority tasks. This way you're less likely to get hung up on details. Now, the world shouldn't be all about taking, or should it? So how do you give proper feedback that's useful to other game developers? Step 1 is simply just doing it. Maybe even take the initiative sometimes, offer your help, be a nice person, and I'm sure a lot of people will be willing to return the favor at some point. Now, the first things you should try to figure out are, what are the design goals of the developer, and what does he want to have feedback on? For that, you can either ask the developer, or you'll just have to make an assumption based on the presentation of the game. Then here are a couple of points that are almost always interesting for game developers. Did the game run smoothly? Were there any bugs, any technical issues? And also, did you understand everything that was going on? Or was there something that confused you? And then one game developers are usually also highly interested in is, when did you feel the urge to stop playing, or when did you stop playing and why? What made you quit? Because very often this points you to one of the core issues of your game. What were you feeling throughout the experience? Try to pay close attention to your feelings and to what triggered those feelings. Which parts of the game did you like or dislike? How close do you think is the game to its design goals, and what could be improved to get it even further towards its design goals? And then if you really want to help the developer, tell him a couple of things about you. What kind of gamer are you? Which games do you usually play? How much gaming experience do you have? All of that is super useful to put your feedback into context. Obviously, try to be very polite and tactful with the feedback you give. For example, always try to balance negative feedback with positive feedback. That just feels a lot better for the person on the receiving end. There are also certain formulations that feel better than others. For example, instead of saying what really sucked about your game, you could say something like, you could improve your game even further by ... I feel like being a little careful and tactful with the feedback you give is especially important when giving feedback to beginners. If your feedback makes them quit game development because they are frustrated, you suck at giving feedback. Sorry, I mean your feedback could be improved even further by encouraging them instead of discouraging them. And I think one part of that is also not to overwhelm the developer with feedback. In case you do give a lot of feedback, make clear what your highest priority points are, what do you care about most. Also, it's very helpful if you don't just point at the flaws of the game, but also suggest some concrete solutions the developer could use to fix them. And then obviously the very best thing you can do if you want to help a developer is record yourself playing the game. Record a playthrough of the game. Obviously, it's not necessary to do all of that, because giving one sentence of feedback is still a lot better than giving no feedback at all. I'd really love to discuss this with you, because I think it's really important. This could make all of our games so much better. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. And also check out this video right here. I think it will help you to make your game a lot better as well. This is Jonas. I document the entire journey to becoming a game developer, and I share absolutely everything I learn on the way. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.